Welcome back to Your Ag Empire. This is part 2 of our conversation with Brandon Vining, agronomist, independent consultant, and the guy who decided growers deserve better. If you haven't listened to part 1 yet, go do that first. We talk through the broken agronomy model and how Brandon stepped away from retail to put farmers first. In this episode, we're picking up with the real meat: soil health, fertility programs, mental health in ag, and how field level decisions are shaping the future of farming. Let's get into it. Now, I'm going to shift gears a little bit. So, building ProGro Consulting.
Okay.
What was it like stepping out of retail and a big corporate ag and going out on your own? What was the biggest challenge? What did that look like? How did give us an insight?
Sleepless nights, right? Sleepless nights. I don't think I'll ever forget the night that we're thinking about doing this, my wife and I. And we're laying in bed and it's 11 o'clock at night. She's, "Are you sleeping?" I'm like, "No." She's, "You going to sleep tonight?" I said, "Probably not." She goes, "Is it really worth it?" And I said, "Absolutely, it's going to be worth it." And then she says, "Okay, be one person who in the prime of their career has done this." And I said, "I don't know of it." And she goes, "So why is it going to be successful?" I said, "Because I'm going to do it. It's what we're going to do. It's how we're going to do it." So it's that entrepreneurial drive that says, "Hey, this is what has to happen." Now, I don't want to be a leader. I've never been a leader, right? I'll sit in the back of the room with everybody else. I don't have to be in the front of the pack, but somebody has to look out for the grower, and
Sure.
somebody has to have the grower's mindset first that says, "Hey, we can't do this. We're going to have to do something else because I can't afford to do that." And so
Absolutely.
honestly, yeah, sleepless nights, definitely. It's been a learning curve for me as well, because man, as soon as I did this, my neighbors didn't want to be friends anymore, especially if they were in ag retail, right?
Oh, I'm sure you've made enemies along the way. But I also think too, like your heart was in the right place. I feel like you're doing what God called us to do, and that's to serve others. And you're just doing it in this realm, in this spot. How do you approach working with growers differently now compared to when you were ag retail?
I think the growers and I can have frank conversations about budgets, profitability, planning, crop plans, all that stuff.
Yeah.
I think is a way more open conversation now, because before you're guarded. So if I'm in ag retail and I'm promoting DeKalb seed and the Pioneer seed dealer is your buddy, you're going to say, "Hey, I'm going to plant a little DeKalb and I'm going to plant a little Pioneer because I want to try and see which is best on my acres."
You
But
bet.
really what happens is that the guarded conversation is, I don't get to hear as ag retail the conversations you have with Pioneer. Okay. I get
Yeah.
to have conversations about decal, but I don't get to have those. So I think that relationship becomes so much tighter with the independence of, "Hey, you're not promoting a product to me. No, I'm doing what's best for this acre on this farm and for you, because this is what we have to do as a team, right? I'm going to
Yeah.
take this piece of pie out of the pie that's laying on the table and I'm going to hold it. Okay. Now, when you want it back, I'll give it back to you instantly, right? But I'm going to hold it because I can concentrate on this and I can help you read the market. I can help you do some research. I can help you dissect what's here so that you know what's best for your operation on individual fields or individual pieces of the field," right?
That it's interesting because we just recently got back from a trip. I spoke at a summit with Figured down in New Zealand. And it was interesting to visit with the producers down there in from New Zealand, from Australia, or Australia, as they put it. Those guys are very much pro consulting. And the reason is they want to build a team around that farm or ranch, or over there in Australia, they call it stations, but same situation. And we are, as producers, having to wear so many hats that having trusted people that work with you and help you achieve that growth that you're wanting to achieve, because let's face it, it's easy to bury up into the work. We can kill a year in a hurry with just burying up and working harder. But I even put it in a LinkedIn post recently. We've always been taught to work harder, and I'm not discounting the fact that you need to work hard. What I am discounting is the fact that we're getting to a spot in this industry. We're a very mature industry. It has to be working smart. You can achieve those goals much faster if you've got a team that can help you and hold you accountable in that process rather than you flying by the seat of your pants and then making bad decisions, because those bad decisions cascade over time. That's when we end up with 3 to 4 year setback that you didn't have planned. And yes, we work hard and we trudge through and we make it, but why not try to get to those goals and those achievements faster so that then you can focus on it? You're in your 50s and you've got kids that are coming along and you're sitting here thinking, okay, I've already made it. It's not if I'm going to make, I've already made it. Let's start that succession plan now. Let's get those kids into the farm if they want to be in the farm.
Right.
Rather than wait till I'm 65 or 75 and I finally turn the reins over and they're in their 40s and they've never balanced a checkbook. That's the kind of stuff that I feel like working with consultants like you and I, like this is where it's been good. And I farm and ranch also. So it's one of those deals. I live and breathe it just like everybody else does.
Absolutely. And honestly, you go back to your experience in New Zealand, and I almost feel personally that they're steps ahead of us because they've been willing to hand the reins to somebody else that says, hey, why don't you drive for 10 minutes while I concentrate on this so that I can make a better decision on this, and then I'll take the reins back. But I feel like they've made, I don't even know if better's the word of choice, but I know they have made better decisions because of that, because they can actually concentrate long enough to say, hey, this is the pros, this is the cons, this is what I have to do. They can think about it long enough to make that decision. What people don't understand in ag is that if we make a hiccup today, 5 years from now, that hiccup still shows on my balance sheet. I'm sure you've seen that before.
Oh,
with your
absolutely.
accounting stuff is that hiccup doesn't leave. That hiccup is there. And
we've got to pay for the hiccup at some point.
right.
And we can shove all this stuff down 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 years down the road, but at some point we got to pay the piper. It's coming.
And I think that's one thing that separates agriculture from other businesses is we do have the ability to push those mistakes farther down the line, but I think it weighs on mental health of the producer because they know they've made that mistake. And it's like, when am I going to pay the piper? We don't know when commodity prices are going to be good to pay the piper. So we're writing that. And so that mental health on people, it just weighs on that decision. And really and truly, I mean, we're macho, we're in ag. We like to get dirty at the end of the day. What's a good sign of a good day is you come home and take your clothes off on the porch because you're too dirty to come in the house. That's when you know you've had a good day on the farm.
I agree. I think that is huge when it gets back to deep down, those guys are carrying a lot of weight from some of those mistakes. And it's not that we're not going to make mistakes. We're dealing with the weather. We're dealing with soil, water. There's a whole lot of things that are out of our control. And we've got to have some faith that God's going to help us through that situation. That's really, I think it's important that us as agriculturalists, doesn't matter if you're in the livestock sector or in the row crop, hay, whatever your discipline is, that you've got that faith component. And I think it's important because otherwise it will eat you up inside. We're going to make mistakes.
Absolutely. And when you make a mistake, the best thing you can do is own it today rather than put it in there in an isolated spot in the back corner of your brain. And then 50 years from now, it's still in there festering.
Yep.
If you make a mistake, own it, move on. I just hope it's not a big one, but no, seriously, it's the way we work.
Standing up for the grower. Now, you've said there's a need for someone to stand up for the producer. What does that look like in practice?
I think it's having the grower's best interest in mind in everything you do. Like for me, okay, if I'm crop scouting, I view it as this is my farm, this is my field. What would I do if I was running this field? Okay. If I've got bugs and they're on the threshold, I'm going to have to spray. Okay. Am I going to spray this that costs $10 or this that costs $5 that will get me the same yield result? I'm going to use the stuff that costs $5. Okay. If I need a little fertility at this time, what would I put on if it was my farm? So I think you have to put yourself riding shotgun with the grower, right?
Sure.
That says, this is the way my recommendation has to be wrote because this is what I have to do in order to make the farm successful, number one, right? But number
Uh-huh.
two, it's the job done, right? We all commute to work, right? Whether it's to the field or it's to the barn or it's on, and it's okay. Do I want to ride in the Cadillac on the way to work? Sure. But you know what? Will the four-wheeler get me there? Probably. Let's figure out what we got to do. So I think you got to look at all aspects of it, Jonathan. It's
It,
not just cost, it's cost, performance, longevity. All of those pieces have to go into what you're talking about. And honestly, I think the growers need somebody to stand up to them. I love to go to our local FFA chapter and talk about what I do and try to explain to these young producers that says, hey, your dad might be doing it this way, but this is the way I do it. And this is why. Because
sure.
honestly, I think we got some brilliant minds that are younger that really have never had the ability to take the reins yet. Not just FFA kids, but even kids that are on the farm that will call me when dad's on vacation and says, hey, I really been stewing on this for the last 6 months. What do you think? Talk through this. And
Yeah.
then and they appreciate the ability to have that conversation. And then I have the precursor conversation with dad that says, hey, you
How
know,
do we?
how do we address this? Because one of the boys is saying he really wants to do this. So how do we get him to where he wants to do? So it's
Sure.
that whole, I don't even know if you want to say I'm a psychiatrist or a counselor or a therapist.
Yeah.
I really
Yeah.
don't know. Having trust in people, I think that trust factor becomes huge.
I totally agree. I totally agree. That to me, there's a book out called The Speed of Trust. And I personally, I think everybody ought to read that, especially folks that are in sales. I think it's important because really, I think a lot of young folks that they get into a sales role and they think they're selling product. No, you're not selling product, you're selling yourself. And if you align morally and you align in a relationship manner where you truly care about those guys, whoever you're trying to sell to, you're going to build that relationship. And at the end of the day, that is the speed of trust. It's all relationship based.
Absolutely it is. And I think those relationships are lifelong, long term, right? I really think
Sure.
they are. And honestly, I look at it as it's a lot easier to maintain a customer or maintain a client than it is to earn a new one.
I
So
agree.
that relationship with those guys
Is every
it's everything that I strive for on a daily basis, right? Now, I would love to help everybody in the world, right? That
yeah,
would be my dream job. But how do you help everybody at the same time? You got to prioritize what you're doing and when and how and all those things. Yeah.
absolutely. What's been the response? You and I have got several clients that are part of Empire Ag that are also part of ProGro. Like what's been the response from the growers they were used to that traditional ag retail consultant coming out, selling and consulting them? How does that look? And what's been the response from those guys to shift that model?
It's been different, Jonathan. Just to backtrack a little bit, 5 years ago, I had friends and acquaintances and all these people that would call me because I would go to the Commodity Classic or I would go to a trade show or I would go somewhere and somebody from Colorado would call me and say, hey, I don't know if you remember me, but we had a conversation about this and I kept your card. Can I bounce some ideas off? Yeah, sure. Let's chat. How's the wife? How's the kids? How's the farm? What's the health? And so we started doing that. And so honestly, it's changed my business a little bit because I do quite a bit of online consulting now with
Yep.
guys that are in different states that I have never been on their farm. I've met them before. I haven't seen them, but you can learn a lot from a video chat, from a picture, from a text, from all of these things that are different. It's both ways. But then there's other guys that I deal with on a daily basis that live within 15 miles of me, right?
Yep.
That I'll see them at a basketball game, I'll see them at the kids'
They're,
wrestling match, etc. And so
yeah.
those relationships are easy. But these online ones, it's interesting how this works. It doesn't matter if we're growing cotton in the panhandle of Texas
Yep.
or if they're raising corn in South Dakota or grass in Alabama, right? These guys all have the same questions. And the questions are, they relate back to soil science, soil chemistry, plant physiology. It doesn't matter what we're doing. I mean, acid soils are definitely different than alkaline soils, but we're all farming. We're all trying
Absolutely.
to end goal, right?
And even you and I have talked, like I was running the combine and down in Texas, For us to grow corn, typically, and I would say probably 10 years ago, 15 years ago, like if you hit 100 bushels, 110, like you were really doing something. And I'm running the combine. We're hitting 185 to 225. And I'm calling you because it's like I've got one field and I've got six little fields basically in that big field. And the soil varies so much that I went from 60 to 275 on the yield monitor, it, all in the same field. It's got the same fertility, the same seed, the same chemical program. Like it was just very interesting. And you and I mapped that field out. And you told me a lot about what I'm seeing just because we overlaid what my yields were, where the fields that I was seeing the problems in. And I just feel like it was good. It was good for me, one, because you and I have some very similar customers and seeing how you interact with them. And I really valued that in being able to utilize that.
And I appreciate that. And not to go down another side trail here, but honestly, I think with technology that we have today in tractors, in combines, in fertilizer spreaders, in planters, etc., I really think the next step for the majority of the producers in the world is going to be, how do I maximize production on individual acres? Because each individual acre is its own kid, it's got its own identity. It's got its own genetic makeup, whether it be soil type, whether it be reflectance, whether it be subsoil. Right. There is so many individual pieces that are out there. Now, equipment and technology is getting better. We've all seen the See and Spray cool thing that runs around and it sprays Roundup on weeds and whatnot, robotic weeders and all of this stuff that's coming, Absolutely. This drone technology. But I really think we're getting to the point where Jonathan's going to say, hey, in those 6 individual fields, in that pivot or in that section or quarter section, whatever it is, okay, why am I doing the same thing on every piece when I'm getting 60 bushel versus 275 bushel?
Yeah. Okay? Let's only fertilize for 60 is our top end on the sorry field.
Right.
And let's shoot for 300 over here on these 2 that just keep knocking it out of the park.
Correct. And then you go back to field history and you're like, hey, Jonathan, what was in those fields previously? And 9 times out of 10, it turns out to where, if you're in the upper Midwest, hey, I got tile on those 2, but I don't have tile on the rest of these. Or you go down to Jonathan's area in Texas where we're living on 5 or 7 or 10 inches of rain, right? And you're like, hey, those fields, I bet you they have a higher lime content. If they have a higher lime content, you do realize you got extra potassium there too because of the lime. And so you start breaking it down into individual pieces. And honestly, it tells a story.
Absolutely.
You have to be able to read the story in order to maximize individual acre production.
What do you think is the biggest? We're just going to go towards more of the state of agronomy today, but what are the biggest pain points that you're seeing in soil fertility, nutrient deficiencies, or pest management? What are you seeing?
That's 3-hour topics right there.
I know.
Honestly, soil fertility, if we were to attack that first, I think what's happening, honestly, is we're dictated soil fertility on budget cost. Okay.
Sure.
We're not fixing ground or maintaining ground or putting on crop removal rates of every individual nutrient on a piece of ground because number one, we can't afford it. And number 2, there's no ROI to it. Right. So soil fertility over time is getting less and less because of our removal rates are not keeping up with our additive rates because we can't afford it.
There's a lot of talk too. What's your thought process on this? That we've got a lot of nutrients that are there that are bound up that we don't have access to right now. I think like from a science-based approach to this, I feel like a lot of folks are really starting to dig into, are there other things out there rather than just the traditional NP and K program to try to, 1, cut costs, but 2, let's make more nutrients available. And does that fit like our whole regen ag movement where you don't just slap a bunch more on there?
And I think we're going to be dictated over time to not be able to slap a whole bunch on there because what's going to happen is regenerative ag is the buzzword or soil biology or increasing organic matter. You pick the buzzword that you want to play with, but regenerative ag is something that everybody's done since the 40s. Okay.
Yeah.
Now we've defined it as regenerative, or we've defined it as less inputs, or we've defined it as no-till, or we've added all these pieces to it. But as a producer, the last thing in the world you want to do as a producer is hurt your ground and make it less productive.
Totally
Now,
agree.
to your point, okay, there is lots of nutrients in the soil that are bound up by soil particles. Okay. Number one, okay, remember, any positive charged ion is a cation and the soil is negative charged. So
Yeah.
guess what? Anything that's positive charge is stuck. It's like a magnet, it's stuck. Now we can do some things to manipulate that for sure. Now, as we increase cover crops, as we increase soil biology, as we increase going down this no-till road or this regenerative ag road, okay, naturally we're going to release more and more pounds of those nutrients, because what's happening is we have more and more microbes, more and more bacteria, more and more fungi living in the ground, and that's their job. That's
Sure.
what they do every day.
Yeah.
In order to survive, just like you and I, we belly up to the table once a day because we got to eat, right? Guess what? Those things have to eat too. And the byproducts of them eating is releasing nutrients to our ground.
Absolutely. This is a loaded question. What's something that most people think they know about agronomy that's just flat out wrong?
Oh,
And this has a lot of inflection on Brandon Vining, so we're going to spark some comments.
we're going to spark some comments. Yeah, we're going to start a fight, right?
That's right.
The number one thing that people think they know they don't know. Let's just pick a simple one, okay?
Okay.
Can the plant only take up nitrate, nitrogen, or can it also eat ammonia?
Interesting.
What do you think, Jonathan?
I would say ammonia wouldn't it convert to nitrate at
It will convert to nitrate over time, but will it also eat ammonia, or will it only eat nitrate?
I would think only nitrate.
It eats them both.
Really?
Okay? It'll eat them both. Caveat, right? Just a little something to think through, but
Yeah.
it has a possibility to eat both.
Interesting. Yeah, I would have thought that the ammonia would have to convert through that process before it was able to be taken up, but
And most people would think that, 90% of what it eats is nitrate. We're talking a minimal amount, but it can
Sure.
eat it, right? So, yeah. So
Interesting.
it's definitely something to argue through, right? You can put caveats out there all the time, but no. I think that one other thing I think that's a caveat is most people think that the agronomist's cure for the farm is add more fertilizer.
Yeah.
Most people believe,
Well,
that consultant's here, guess what? I'm going to spend an extra $400 an acre, or he's going to want 200 pounds of this or 100 pounds of that I've never heard of before. Why? Right? Now, you need to be able to ask your guy that. And honestly, if you've got the true advisor, the true partner, the true friend that's looking out for your farm, you shouldn't feel that way.
Brandon, you just segued us right into where I was thinking. Now, you and I, we have a couple clients that we work with together. And I was looking through his per acre cost for chem, fert, seed from this one supplier. I'm not going to name the supplier. Don't want to get either one of us in trouble, but it is one of the big ones. And we were looking, and you even made the comment that this particular producer was spending more on corn and beans based on the recommendations. And we got the recommendation sheet. We went through everything that was actually spent on his QuickBooks file with everything. We dug through it. This guy was spending more than an Idaho potato grower on corn and beans.
Correct.
And when we really dissected this, we found that they double billed on some invoices. Like, it matched the exact amount same day that it came through, but it was like double.
Right.
So we questioned that. They did refund him, but it ended up on his new prescription for the new crop year. We saved him between 300 and 400 grand off of that recommendation. How many acres did that guy farm?
Roughly 1,500.
1,500 acres.
Roughly, yeah.
And What really drove this home when we got to looking at it, he was scared to death. And I got to preface this for our listeners. We went through the soil tests. We've gone through and looked at everything as far as recommendations. Brandon and I talked about what our yield goals were, where our APH was, where is that threshold of profitability, and then we built a program out of that. To fast forward all the way through harvest, this guy was within 3 bushels of his APH. Like, he didn't have any yield, even with some of the weather events that had come through. Like, he probably had better than APH, but we cut 400 grand off of his freaking bottom line. It was the most profitable year he's had in 10 freaking years. So this is the kind of impact that I think it's important to kind of look at this. You and I've got another guy that we work with out of Nebraska. He's implemented some of the regen ag movement stuff. He's really passionate about that. And I've been working with him, so I see it on the financial end of it, and I see where he's at. He's always saying, man, I just don't think the yield's not going to be there. And this guy always is 5 to 7, maybe 10 bushels better than the previous year. And I've watched him go from that 190 to 230 on his corn. And just like from a profitability standpoint, he's really conscious about what he's spending and really this soil health movement, this where he's at, what he's wanting to accomplish. It's been interesting to watch because that one is another one that is more of a remote situation.
Yeah, it is. And honestly, to his defense, the first conversation we had was, hey, I farm with my dad and brothers. Okay. They're conventional guys and I want to do no-till.
Yep.
I said, okay, why? And he went through the whole gamut of why he wants to do no-till, which, you know what? He had some valid arguments. They were great arguments, right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
I agree with them 100%. And I said, okay, what do you need in order to go down this path? He goes, self-confidence. I said, okay, how do I give you individually self-confidence? He goes, I need to talk to somebody that can walk me through the pros and cons of the steps I'm going to take to get there. And so we went through the pros and cons of the conversation. And I remember 8:30 one night, he calls me and he said, man, I sure hope you're right. I said, why? He goes, I just got back from Iowa and I have a crimper. I said, dude, what? He said, I found it. He goes, my wife and I talked about it and I went on a ride and it's in my yard. I said, I guess we're committed now.
That's
yeah,
right.
seriously. But no, and it was simple things for him. It was simple things to go no-till, to put on a cover crop, to not spray a whole bunch of herbicide, to do fertilizer through a pivot. He has overhead irrigation. It was simple little things that he didn't have any trust in that's gained him 25 to 50 bushel an acre on his corn ground.
We all want to try new things, but the margins have been so tight that we don't want to fail in trying new things. And I'm going to use Eric Reed's got that 30-inch wheat that's on social media that everybody's been talking about.
Yep.
And I have no doubt that it's going to do fine. It's going to do great.
It is.
But he was able to step out there and do that. We've got a guy in our group, big time relay cropper.
Yep.
Like, there are things out there and resources where it may be new, it may be totally different, but if you can increase revenue and decrease expenses, like, that's the system that we've got to get to. And I'm not saying that there's not a world that conventional ag, as it has existed for the last 50 years, doesn't continue to exist. But I do think you've really got to be proactive in seeing what that looks like as we move forward on, are there practices that you're already doing that technically fit the regen movement? You just don't call it that. And are you missing 2 steps that could add 7 bushels or really tweak that whole model for you?
And what people aren't understanding is, you talk regen or you talk regenerative or you talk
Those buzzwords,
friendly or you talk sustainability. You pick the buzzword that's out there, right?
Yep.
What I do know is that every manufacturer of flour or corn or soy, etc., every manufacturer that's consuming those, their clients want to know that they are getting sustainably raised crops.
Yeah.
Okay. It's the buzzword. They want to put it on their marketing material. They want to have conversations about it. This is something that comes up in the boardroom that I don't know if the boardroom even knows what they're talking about, but they have a
Sure.
sustainability lead that they're paying money to who's guaranteeing that they can do this stuff. What's happened now is we've transitioned and USDA, NRCS dollars that are out there per county, each county is dictating how they want to spend their money. But I think over half the money that's going to the NRCS and USDA is for quote unquote regenerative ag, sustainability, all of these processes. And so if guys want to try, there's an avenue for them to try that they're going to get rebated or paid part of the cost for trying
Uh-huh.
because there's ways to do it, right? It's just
Yep.
taking that leap of faith that says, I want to do it and here I go.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's what I think we've got the times are shifting and our consumer base is shifting a little bit. I'm not saying I'm for the ESG movement that was put out there, but when I talk to the folks outside of this country that are in ag, they're very much embracing that, which I find a little bit odd. I still believe in freedom, and I feel like if you're a conventional farmer in western Kansas and you decide you want to farm that way, that's perfectly fine. And you should still be able to get financing. You should still be able to operate your business the way you are without impeding anything from a financing institution. They're not farming, they don't know. But you go to other countries, they're doing that and they're forcing you to follow their rules and regulations, whether they make sense or not. They're doing it in order to get the financing and get a lower rate. And I think there is a push from the powers that be to get us into that model.
And I think that push is going to continue getting more and more pressure on that push to get people to get away from the quote unquote conventional. But you know
Yeah,
what? We're Americans. We're pretty resilient and
absolutely.
we're pretty resistant to change, right? The
Sure.
reason we all live here is because we enjoy the freedoms which we have. And so I don't want to be the guy from the government that shows up and says, you will do this or else. I don't will ever get to that point. But what's going to happen too is that if you can sell corn for $6 to one guy and 6.25 for the next guy, you're going to want to sell for 6.25. If the 6.25 says it has to be, you have to do this and this to get 6.25, maybe it's worth the 25 cents, maybe it's not.
Sure.
And I think, Jonathan, we're going to get to a point at some point, they're going to be able to test corn or test beans or test wheat or test any of these commodities. And you might end up getting paid on the quality and the protein content of what's in that deliverable because what you deliver might be better than what somebody else delivers. And I think we're getting there. I hate to say it because this is going to throw the commodity world upside down, right? Is, hey, if I'm raising corn that has 70 pounds specific gravity and I'm getting 70 pounds per cubic foot, like seriously,
Yeah.
shouldn't that be better than somebody that's raising some and delivering some that's got 58?
Sure. Yeah. Protein content's higher, micronutrients available. Like there's all this stuff that I do think if you can love it or hate it, and you guys can comment whenever you see this, but I do think that's where we're headed. I think that's where everybody's going. And it's a lot of folks that are outside of the ag industry that are pushing for this. And I don't think we're going to have a choice. I think we're just going to have to saddle up and it's going to be the new way of doing business.
It may be 50 years from now, but I think we're headed that direction.
Yeah,
I just don't know how big the slope is. Is it
sure.
45 degrees or is it 30 degrees? We just
I
don't know what
would,
the slope on yet.
I honestly feel like we're probably within 15 years of seeing something of that nature come down the pipe. And it could be quicker than that, but time will tell. Brandon,
You heard it here first.
that's right.
2040, Jonathan says, get ready.
Get ready. I guarantee you, there's a desire to go down that road and love it or hate it. And you may be looking at it saying, that'd be a good time for me to retire. And fair enough. But I do think we're going to see something shift in these commodity based programs because when we're getting our profitability where there's literally none, something needs to change. There needs to be something that works. And I don't know what that is. We're hearing there's some big announcements going to come out of the Secretary of Ag soon. I don't know what that's going to be, but they're saying it's going to light a fire under agriculture and bring profitability like nobody else has seen.
I hope they're right.
I,
I hope they're right. We're in a downward trend, and I think everyone agrees it's downward.
Yep.
We're in survival mode today. But
Yep.
here's the deal. Everybody wants to make a profit. That's why we do what we do.
Absolutely.
And whatever we can do to help you make a profit, that's what we're here for.
100%. Brandon, okay, we're going to shift gears. This will be the last segment, but life outside of the fields. Tell us a little bit about your family and what keeps you grounded through all this work.
Work, right? That's what keeps me grounded. No, geez, I have four kids. I have 3 boys and a girl. This gray hair is earned, I guess you could say, right?
The boys have probably tore stuff up over the years.
Oh, absolutely they have. Absolutely they have. So I've got one boy who's 24. He rows a drift boat. He does a fishing guiding, and that's what he does for a living. And he gets to meet some interesting people every day as he floats down the river and gets them on some fish. And that's just, he loves it. I got another boy who's going into airplane mechanics, and I think he's done in May. Hopefully he can find a job and get off the payroll. And then I got another boy who's graduating from college, and he thinks he wants to do what I do. I guess it took a third time to make a charm, but we'll see where the paths lead him to.
Awesome.
At 17 years old, you don't know what you're doing. And then our little girl, she's a freshman in high school. And
that's where the gray hair, that's really where the gray hairs come.
But I do know that she still likes dad, so we're still okay.
You know, that is an understatement. I've got 2 girls and a boy, and yeah, the girls are sweet as can be, and there's just a different relationship with your son and your girls, and I love the fact that I've got both. I really feel for some of the guys that just have one or the other. It definitely makes our household interesting.
It does for sure. And so my wife and I have been married for 25 years, and she tolerates me. More power to her. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I think family, Jonathan, keeps me grounded. We live in a unique spot in the world. We have a lot of scenery here, a lot of topography, and just being out in the dirt, helping those that I love and helping those that need help. I think that's really what keeps me grounded.
I'm really this year, I'm coming out there to see you at some point. Idaho has been on my list. I just have not been able to get out there. But
You're more than welcome anytime. I can give you a tour.
Seems like a good place to be. So, Brandon, where can people learn more about ProGro and the work that you're doing for growers? If somebody's wanting to dig a little bit and find out a little more about you,
they can find me on the web. My website's ProGrowIdaho.com. PROGRO. I can't spell, so there's no W in it, but PROGROIdaho.com on the web. There's contact forms there that they can fill out, and I can get in contact with them. Or honestly, I am open for a conversation anytime. Even if I'm walking a field, I'm typically talking to somebody. Reach out to me anytime, telephone wise. That would be great. Email is Brandon@ProGrowAgronomy.com. So any of those ways you feel that you want to get a hold of me, just reach out. I'm more than happy to have a conversation.
We'll add those links below on the episode, and I'm sure you'd be willing to help anybody out.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us on Your Ag Empire. If this episode gave you a new perspective on agronomy or reminded you why it pays to question the system, pass it along. Don't forget to follow the show so you never miss out on what's coming next. Be good or be good at it.